OK, let's go metaphysical. We've got a web question. It's from Keith Zhao in South Wentworthville in New South Wales. Is there a place for God in science? And Brian, I'll start with you because I know you don't like being referred to as an atheist.
Well, only because I don't believe in a God, right? However, I don't like the antagonism that occurs or is produced by this question. I mean, what you can say if you're a cosmologist, what you should say is, so we know that the universe was very hot and dense 13.8 billion years ago. We don't know how it got hot and dense. We don't even know, actually, if the universe had a beginning in time. Don't know. So that to me is where the science starts for me with I don't know.
Getting more to the point of that question.
So I'm not going. So
you had a bit of an argument with famous atheist Russell Brand, who's also a comic, as we know. But you said to him,
no, Russell's not an atheist. Russell's
he's not.
Strongly believes in.
Is that right? Okay, well, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. You said to him that science doesn't rule out the existence of a creator.
No, but in the sense that I just said, that I think we're overstepping the mark. I do not believe there's any evidence for a creator. However, there certainly isn't the point is that the correct thing to say is we don't even know whether the universe had a beginning. I don't even know whether it was eternal. Nobody does. So that was the point I was making. I think we're stepping into an area where we don't really need to be.
Yeah, and I think a point, and as scientists, we need to be humble about the fact that we don't know everything. And we shouldn't pretend to know anything on a lot of questions because climate change is so incredibly complex. The marine system is all these different inputs and circulations and different drivers. And so, we get to the limit of our knowledge. And I think really what you're trying to say is we need to be careful not to go beyond what we know.
The great Richard Feynman, the great Nobel Prize winner, it's a beautiful quote where he says that he says, "What is the meaning of it all?" Right? And he says, "In the end, we have to admit that we do not know. But in admitting that, we may have found the open channel." That's the key to science. We don't know.
David, what do you think?
So I completely agree with all of those comments, but there's obviously lots of, if you like, mysticism that helps people understand their unexplained observations. Science is one way that we use for trying to explain and gather evidence to help understand a range of, if you like, previously unexplained phenomena. Others in the past, and some presently, also use their own observations and then faith to help them explain that. I think those are different perspectives. None is better or worse than the others. But we need to be careful that if we want to understand natural phenomena, I think what we have to think about is how can we use the evidence that Emma talked about before to make policy decisions. I would much rather base those on well-founded, well-collected evidence than faith.
Fair enough. Kirsten, what do you think? It's an interesting question. Do you think there is some sort of creative being that exists beyond science?
I'm going to give you my favourite answer to give to any science question if I don't know. I don't know. I'm with you, Brian. We don't know. It's like Brian says, I'm going to say there's null evidence. Not some, null. It's just...
There's a very quick, serious point I'd like to make, which is that I remember once I was giving a talk to schools in London. And London is a very, very diverse population of many people, of many faiths and none. Right? And I was asked that question, is it possible to be a scientist and believe in God? And I was taken back, actually. And so I said, yes. And I was going to have some common caveat, like you said, the caveats there. But I got a round of applause. And I thought, this is important, because the last thing someone like we should do is close off that possibility of being a scientist because someone has...
Well, I mean, Professor Hanbury Brown, who built the interferometer up in Parkes, I think, he believed in God. I grew up with him. I know that.
There are... So the worst thing to do would be for a room full of students to say, well, you can't be a scientist because you believe this thing or that thing or the other. That would be a terrible thing to do.
Got time for... sorry... bit quick
No,
comment,
and I
we'll
mean,
move
you know,
on.
if we say God, it's everybody would imagine something different, I suppose, and we have to realize that it's probably not sort of the little translation of the Bible that the earth was created in 7 days and all the rest of that. Certainly, from the scientific perspective, that would be hard to adopt. But going back further in time and with some of the unknown questions that are still confronting us, you know, so I think we have to be a little bit open-minded about what God is to people and what it could be.
We've got time for one last question to go beyond God to the end of the universe. It's from James Goodchild.
Thanks, Tony. So my question to the panel is, do you believe in the cold death of the universe? So that is, everything achieves a thermal equilibrium where it is so cold that life cannot, or no life can survive.
Brian, I'll start with you because it has to be your special subject.
It's usually called the heat death. I mean, what we know about the universe at the moment is that it's expanding, and it's expanding faster and faster, which was actually an Australian Nobel Prize, right? Brian Schmidt. So we know that. So an in such universe, as you said, you look at the galaxies and star formation rates in galaxies. There comes a time in the universe, if nothing else happens, when the stars will no longer shine. Stars do not continue to form forever. Matter gets locked away. So in that sense, the standard model of cosmology is that the age of starlight, if you want to call it that, is finite. And I have the number in my head, actually, that you can calculate, and it's something like 10 trillion years when the last star ceases to shine, or fusion in stars ceases and switches off. And so that's a long time, but it's a finite amount of time. And I find that quite a powerful thought, actually.
Will there still be black holes at that point?
There'll be black holes, but we think even they evaporate away on extremely long timescales. What Stephen Hawking is famous for. We're talking about one with 100 noughts after it years, right? And so it's a long time. But I think just that basic idea that the age of complexity and structure in the universe, as far as we can tell, is limited. Tells us something. It tells us that we are fortunate. Again, I go back to that point. Science does. There is some, I don't know, spiritual nourishment, if you like, or philosophical nourishment to be had from the science. And just these very ideas that the universe is not eternal. It may be eternal, but the structures in the universe are not eternal, is an important.
Well, I mean, it actually sounds a bit depressing to me because, I mean, you are saying that there's nothingness at the end of everything. That nothingness is profound, isn't it?
Well, is it depressing? I mean, it's like human life. I think about this quite a lot. Well, you know, what does it mean to live a finite life? If you don't believe in God, as we talked about, you may well think, well, this is it. Well, but that to me is a remarkable thought. It's the only interesting thought to me. In my live shows, I tend to say sometimes that for me, the only interesting thought is how to live an intensely meaningful life, which we do, in a ultimately meaningless universe, which goes to the end of the time, you know, with the heat death. But that to me is the only interesting philosophical point.